This episode of Bartholomew Town is brought to you by the University of Rhode Island Online, Newport Film, Navigant Credit Union, Half Street Group, and Health Source RI for employers.
Bartholomew Town.
Attorney General Neronha, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. We are rolling here from your office on Howard Avenue. It's a great facility, by the way.
It is, yeah.
It's a great consumer interface facility.
It is. I don't spend a lot of time here. I'm usually in Providence, but our BCI unit, which is out in front, does, I think, 300 to 400 window transactions a day. It does it very quickly, so I'm pleased by the customer service they provide. And our Medicaid fraud unit is here. Our cold case unit is here. Everybody who's down here does a really, really good job.
There's so many different fields we could hit to today in this conversation. I think let's start on the federal level, where you've been one of the attorneys general really leading some of the litigation against the Trump administration. And a lot of this has to do with funding and things like that.
Yeah.
But what I think is clear right now, at least for blue state attorneys general who are getting involved in actions against Trump, it's both the specifics of the various litigation they're pursuing, but to me, there's an attitude that's being taken as well, which is, hey, at this level, we're going to serve as a backstop for, one, the Constitution and human rights in some cases.
Yeah.
Do you feel that? Do you, in general, like the specifics of each suit that comes out, while they matter, this is more about taking a stand of sorts? Is that fair to say?
Look, I think I get a little discouraged when commentators talk about the number of suits that we brought, 12 in Rhode Island out of a total of more than 40 brought by AGs, as if we're just suing the president because we get up in the morning to sue the president. Kind of like the Texas Attorney General, I think, said once that if he didn't get up in the morning and sue Barack Obama that day, then he didn't feel like he was doing his job. That's exactly the opposite of how we look at it, and I look at it. There's a rubric we use, and the first one is, are the president's actions unlawful? Either they violate the Constitution or they violate other federal laws passed by Congress. Many times the Administrative Procedures Act. That's question number one. If the president has done that, by doing so, has he harmed Rhode Islanders? In my specific case, and if he has, then do we, as attorneys general, have it within our authority to bring the suit? That's called standing. And if all those things, the answer to is yes, then we bring a lawsuit. And that has been the analysis which has gone into every single case that we brought. Everything from the funding cases, Bill, that you've already referenced, to things like birthright citizenship and many, many others. I remember when I was running, there are always a number of issues that are out there that are controversial. And I know that in some quarters, not everybody likes the fact in Rhode Island that we've sued the president as often as we have, and done it 12 times here in Rhode Island, which is a high number. Many of those things have been about principle. Birthright citizenship is a fine example of that, and there are others. But even if you, as a Rhode Islander, for whatever reason, think that the country should end birthright citizenship, I don't, but let's assume you're a Rhode Islander who thinks that. Those Rhode Islanders should also know that we're fighting and have fought to ensure that Rhode Island gets $650 million that we would not have gotten had we not gone to court to force the president to give us those funds that had been allocated to us by Congress from our tax money that we send to Washington. So it's not like this is a pot of money that's coming out of nowhere. These are our tax dollars. We send them to Washington when we pay our federal taxes, which is a huge chunk, right, of the overall tax burden we pay. It's far more than state tax. It's far more than local property tax. And so that's money that comes back to us allocated by the Congress. The president has no right to prevent that. But that's $650 million. And so your Rhode Islanders might ask, well, what is that for? Well, it goes for education, for example. Money that goes out to all of the state school districts for education that we force the president to reverse. Money for public health. money for infrastructure, road building, bridge building. We hear a lot about bridge building these days. That's the kind of thing that this money was, healthcare, that this money is designed to do. The president tried to take it back. So even if you don't care about the principles, so you don't care if the president breaks the law, or you don't care about the other principles that we fought for, from a purely economic perspective, I think every Rhode Islander can and should recognize the importance of their Attorney General's office and their Attorney General fighting to ensure that Rhode Islanders have the means to keep the things that they need going. And the losers in this litigation, because we're only fighting for the states that are bringing the lawsuit. We're not fighting for New Hampshire that didn't bring the lawsuit. Well, they've lost a lot of money, and that's become very controversial in New Hampshire. It's been covered by the Boston Globe, for example, where the Attorney General and the Governor are taking some real heat for not being part of these lawsuits and watching their infrastructure funding and healthcare funding and research funding go out the window.
Right. And it's interesting you note it's about allocation of funds that come, in large part anyway, directly from taxpayers' pockets.
Absolutely.
So there seems to be a disconnect where some people do think that this is like a pile of money that is discretionary for the president, and
Correct.
You're just saying, or other attorneys general just saying, well, we want that, we're entitled to that. Like it's somehow
Correct.
They'll measure it as this is an entitlement program
Right.
for Rhode Island. Can't you get your act together?
Right. Or it's wasteful spending. I mean, this is money. The federal government pays 75 to 80% of every bridge and every road that we build. So where is the money going to come? We're going to do only 20% of our necessary road and bridge building out of state funding. Well, we're going to be without a Washington Bridge for a very, very, very long time. It's already been too long.
Yeah.
You know, our grandchildren will be still watching that thing go if we don't get that kind of federal funding. So, yeah, this is really important to Rhode Islanders. And again, it's our money. What we've seen lately, too, Bill, is the president trying to punish blue states by moving monies away from blue states and two red states, excuse me. And so there's going to be litigation about that as well. You know, I really feel like the offices working together have become the watchdog for the American people. You know, fighting for the principle that there's no one over powerful, omnipotent branch of government. There are three co-equal branches of government: the Congress and the President. And the Supreme Court, and I believe that the president doesn't view our principles of government that way.
Yeah, clearly, that at least in attitude and in action is demonstrating that he doesn't care or doesn't respect or just wants to move into a different era of the United States. It's startling to see it on a daily basis.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting, Bill. My wife, talking to my wife last night. I was just reading the newspaper while we were both in the kitchen, and I said, look at these pictures of the president tearing down the east. I guess it's the east wing of the White House.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess you do. I guess you deconstruct buildings the same way with a very large backhoe or crane. But somehow I feel like the White House deserves more respect than that.
Right.
Just because of all the history there. But my wife said it's a great metaphor for the way the president has been dismantling our democracy. And I had to say, I hadn't really thought of it that way to her. And I said, you've really hit the nail on the head. It is a really good metaphor for that. It's just go in with a bulldozer and take the thing down. And I really feel like that's what he's trying to do with our democracy.
Yeah, terrifying stuff. And we'll certainly keep an eye as you continue with litigation, as you just hinted there. No doubt there's a lot more coming. We're only 10 months into Trump.
Oh yeah, it'll continue. Bill, too, the other thing that I'm listening to a book on Stalin by Stephen Kotkin. I believe it's a 3-volume biography. And I'm listening to it both in the car and when I work outside and when I walk around the neighborhood and exercise. And there are certainly echoes of the 30s here. And I think of it, Stalin starved and massacred his own people. So I don't mean to draw that linkage that directly, but there is this linkage, and that is that the party, truth was what the party said it was, the Communist Party. Truth was what Stalin said it was. And I really feel like that's the world we're living in a little bit today, where the the president and people who support him, truth isn't truth. It's what they say truth is. And Trump, even in his first term, detethered elected officials from the truth, detethered the president from the truth. And that is a very dangerous thing. Yeah. A very dangerous thing.
Yeah,
and you see it all over social media. Even I was reading, Patricia Morgan's a great example. She's been tweeting recently that, the state is building housing for, to use her phrase, illegal aliens in every city and town in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
That's not truth. Yeah. I don't know whether she believes it, and the marbles are not working so well, or she's just trying to rally the MAGA troops, but it's really irresponsible.
Right.
Ask her to point you to one project in the state that's being used, where taxpayer money is being used to build housing for undocumented Rhode Islanders.
Yeah.
Show me just one.
You're not going to find it anywhere.
You're not going to find it anywhere. If they do, I'll carry Patricia Morgan on my back in the West Warwick St. Patrick's Day Parade.
What's amazing about it is, for all the pushback on the fake news and everything, now you've got all of these MAGA influencers inside the White House press room. So it's created this ecosystem of, okay, if you have any kind of platform, you're now the sculptor of, or maybe not the sculptor of, you're the mouthpiece for all this garbage, all the lies. And you end up with a Patricia Morgan, who is a local, for anyone who doesn't know, she's a local state representative. She's ran for governor. She ran for Senate, I think.
She's nearing Alan Waters'
exactly
record of running for offices with very little hope of winning.
Yeah, and also
repeatedly
no clear platform other than
anger and resentment and aggrievement. Yeah, it's true, and it's really reflective of what you see out there. Not to single her out, but she is a good metaphor for what you see. And to your point, Nancy Pelosi, I heard, and I think it's time for Nancy Pelosi to personally to go back to California and retire. She had a great run, I suppose, but she told some journalists to shut up.
Yeah.
We've all had responses we're not proud of, but the question was, why did you call the National Guard on January 6th? Well,
total lie.
It's a total lie. Total lie. It's as if January 6th, as my erstwhile opponent once said in my last race, it was trespassing.
Yeah.
It's like, truth is what the party says the truth is. It's not what we all saw on the television, however many years ago that was.
Yeah. And that's why the state level is such an important place for, hey, it's a word that gets distilled into different meanings, but resistance.
Yeah.
I think that's really what it is. And
it's action and not just talk. I think for everyday citizens, the exercising your First Amendment right is important. Talking, marching, speaking, writing. I think for elected officials, it's action and not just words. What I've really been proud of the last year or so, it's coming up on a year, a little less, 8-9 months, I guess, is we've been able to take action. And, I think there's some elected officials in Rhode Island that have been relatively late to the fight. They thought that they could work with this president. Yeah. Brown's a perfect example. This president's a bully. You settle with him today, 2 months later, he's back for more of your milk money. I think some elected officials, for expediency, not ready for a fight, wanted to try to work with this guy. And you really, look, while I am sort of wired to fight, I'm a trial lawyer by training, the fights that I try to bring are the ones that are important. And as we already talked about, there's a legal violation, Rhode Islanders are harmed, we have standing to do it. And I'm prepared to work with anybody, but this president has just demonstrated, both in his first term and even more so in his second term, that he's not willing to work with anybody except on his terms. And his terms are authoritarian. And I'm just not prepared to play in that space.
Yeah, clearly a dystopian moment, no doubt about it. You mentioned local officials who, and I think I think it's fair to say that Governor McKee, I remember he went to a governor's convention at the White House with the president, called into WPRO right afterwards and said, we met, we talked about the bridge. I took a photo with the president. My wife and I took a photo of the president. That tone has shifted as his seemingly staff puts out tweets now that say, oh, Trump's bad. But it almost seems like there is here in Rhode Island more of, at least to me, there's either more of an appetite for what the type of work that you're doing, the type of even grassroots organizing that's happening against some of the ICE activities around courthouses, things like that. That feels like that has more of a pulse than let's take a moderate lane here and try to work with this president.
Yeah, look, I think in the governor's case, it's political. I think it's political expediency, for being honest. I mean, if he cared about the fight, he would have been more supportive of our office, regardless of his distaste for me. So, there's no doubt that in a Democratic primary next year, the governor is facing an uphill battle, and so he's trying to tap into what he sees as Democratic primary voters who would resist this president. But the governor's track record on this is not credible. And even our other statewide officials, whether it be the lieutenant governor, for example, what can the lieutenant governor do? Probably very little. Really, the lieutenant governor can't do really much about anything. But there's a bully pulpit there. And so, the delegation has been outspoken. They're limited what they can do because they don't control the Congress. But I've been really disappointed with our local statewide officials for not being outspoken. The Secretary of State certainly stepped up when it came to elections. We worked closely with him, and the treasurer's in sort of a different lane. But there could be more leadership, particularly out of the governor on this, and it doesn't strike me as overly genuine, frankly. Yeah,
and one thing about the lieutenant governor, what they can do, I think we saw what Brad Lander did as New York City comptroller. Again, I'm not saying that the lieutenant governor of Rhode Island should be getting arrested on a regular basis or anything like that, but there is a bully pulpit, and then there is an entrepreneurial lane for that office and an opportunity to show up in situations that may be unconventional, much like we saw in New York City with some elected officials. Actually, statewide officials. We saw it in New Jersey. We saw it in Newark, of course. I'm not sure that's the right thing, but it is an option, and we're not seeing anything.
Well, sure. I mean, I think the lieutenant governor's office is what you make of it. I mean, if you it's sort of like the AG's office. We sort of expanded our role. I mean, we weren't doing a lot of what we call public protection, consumer rights. For example, energy work. We're going to file a letter today with the PUC that objects to the agreement between the governor and Rhode Island Energy about returning so-called monies to consumers, because we feel and are convinced that the way that dollar amount has been calculated is wrong and is depriving Rhode Islanders of almost $40 million. Right. Shorting Rhode Islanders $40 million because of the way the governor and Rhode Island Energy calculated the time value of money. That's not something the office would have ever done. We're much more active in healthcare. So my point is, we took the AG's office and we expanded its purview. We found ways to be impactful. Look, it's not written anywhere that the Rhode Island Attorney General's office can engage in healthcare policy making. Yet we have, and it's been followed by raising, for example, primary care, Medicaid rates to Medicare rates. There's no reason the lieutenant governor couldn't do the same thing, whoever the lieutenant governor is. And so, in the context of pushing back against Trump, there's much more work that people can and should do. And in terms of the governor, we have had, and I'm really grateful to the Speaker and the late Senate President, the current Senate President, for supporting our office, not only to do the kind of work I just mentioned, but also the Trump work. I mean, I need great lawyers to do that. And the governor really hasn't been supportive of that at all.
Bartholomew Town.
Are you ready to take the next step in your career? URI Online offers business and leadership-focused programs designed to fit your life. Whether your goal is to advance in your career in fields like public administration, supply chain management, or training and development, their online programs provide the flexibility you need with the high-quality education you deserve. Learn more from experienced faculty and collaborate with a network of professionals, all from the comfort of your home. or wherever life takes you. Visit uri.edu/online to explore programs and start building your future today. URI Online. Learn anywhere with us. As Rhode Island's first ever member-owned credit union, Navigant Credit Union has been a staple in the local business community for more than 108 years. Today, Navigant is a $3.4 billion institution serving more than 136,000 members across 25 physical branch locations. But since its founding in 1915, the mission has never changed. Navigant Credit Union's team of financial professionals have remained committed to improving the financial well-being of the families, businesses, and communities they serve across Rhode Island. Learn more at navigantcu.org.
At HealthSource RI for Employers, we provide access to health insurance to more than 1,200 local businesses and nonprofits, and 96% of them renew through us every year. Maybe it's our choice of 19 different health plans, our more than 10 years of customizing solutions, or our one local team of dedicated experts helping employers find quality health and dental insurance. See how our numbers stack up for you. Learn more at healthsourceri.com/employers.
We're brought to you in part by Newport Film. Make sure you check out their indoor film screening series by visiting newportfilm.com. Half Street Group brings a new generation's perspective to leadership communications, strategic public relations, and digital marketing. Half Street helps organizations and leaders take control of their own stories and manage their reputations. They get results for their clients by focusing on audience, message, and culture, and by leveraging their decade-long relationship with media and opinion leaders in the Ocean State and throughout New England. Join me and Half Street Group founder and president Mike Rea for a conversation every month about news of the day, the hottest media analysis, and a look behind the scenes at how impactful leaders drive conversations. Learn more at halfstreetgroup.com.
You announced this month, after a lot of speculation and different sort of takes on whether or not all of a sudden you're going to be in a semi-ticket with Helena Bonanno Folks, and you're going to run for lieutenant governor, you're going to run for governor. I mean, look, a lot of this stuff is, at the end of the day, it's entertainment for 5,000 to 10,000 people that really care. Yes. And at the end of the day, it's what does it really mean? Political speculation. At the same time, I think there was a lot of interest in your potential candidacy for governor because of the various lanes that you've been able to occupy with environmental work, obviously with healthcare, this tactic of litigation against Trump, so on and so forth, you know. And now that you've announced that you're not only not running for governor, you're getting out of the political lane. Is there anything that you would recommend to the candidates out there just that could apply some of the ethos that you've brought to the table that has resonated with Rhode Islanders that are now in some cases disappointed that you're not going to be pursuing additional political office?
Well, look, I think just be genuine. I mean, you know, I came to politics, you know, relatively late in life. I was 54. So, you know, politics to me was a means of becoming Attorney General and to do work that I love and to do work I never envisioned even doing, and I've loved doing it. I think that politics, I think there's some people who just, how do I put this? If politics is the only thing you can do, if your political, if your elected office is sort of what you look back over your career and it's the only place you could have found, I don't want to say found work, but there are people who are just career politicians, and it doesn't matter what the office is. They just want to be in politics and be in office. And I think Rhode Islanders see that, and so they don't trust what they're hearing, and they question motivations. And I always try to be, I just try to be genuine and to say what was on my mind and try to do the right thing. And I think most elected officials certainly do that. But I think where I found encouragement and support to run for governor was among people who look back on my record, both as U.S. Attorney and Attorney General, and found some level of achievement there, and a willingness, and I think a capability to lead. And I think that's what Rhode Islander needs most right now is leadership an ability to attract other quality people to build a great team. I mean, you need a great team. Anything that I've accomplished as Attorney General and U.S. Attorney and will accomplish in the last year that I have ahead of me is because I have a great team around me. Many of whom came with me from the U.S. Attorney's Office to my current job. Dee Goldstein and Steve Danbrook are two great examples. Ed Troiano, who leads our investigative group so capably. But I think what Rhode Islanders want and what they need is in their elected officials is for them to be genuine and to be able to deliver results. I think if elected officials or politicians or candidates go into the work with that in mind, rather than politics as an end unto itself, they'll appeal to Rhode Islanders and they'll serve them better.
Yeah, I think that's super well said, and I completely agree with that perception that it's out there and it's across the political spectrum. I think people who are DSA members in Providence and people who are Trump supporters in Hopkinton right now that I talk to on a regular basis resonate that exact same message. So it's pretty clear. One last question, if we could, just
Sure.
Washington Bridge stuff. Look, the travel of this, anybody who's listening, I outlined this in a couple of podcasts. If you go back, you'll find them just a few episodes if you're interested in the details. But we're talking about the WJE report. It was a draft report that was ordered by Governor McKee in the months following the closure of the westbound span of the Washington Bridge. There's been a lot made of the back and forth, some of the emails that are surrounding this. Jim Hummel has published some stories that are pertaining to this report and others as well. And a website called What's Going On in Rhode Island, or a social media account with a website, obtained this bit of information and started to trickle out pieces of this audit, this forensic audit that showed in sum, hey, this bridge has been in deterioration at some level for a long time. This is not just like a heavy truck went over it and oops, what do you know, we got to close down a major bridge. You ultimately decided to publish that report once it was leaked and published by What's Going On in Rhode Island. What was your thinking on that? And are you worried that at some level that jeopardizes the state's pursuit against 13 contractors? Of course, it's a draft report. It has a different set of circumstances when it comes to discovery and so on and so forth.
Sure.
But it's just to Rhode Islanders who are wondering, why did you? What was it you're thinking about publishing that?
Yeah, it was produced to the defendant, so it wasn't hidden from them. So, it was produced it was subpoenaed from the company that drafted it. And so it's not the practice and has never been the practice of any judge or court rule to, as you're producing discovery, even in a very high-profile case, to just sort of put it out there in public, because discovery includes, for example, there will be a lot of experts that are going to weigh in on how this bridge got to be where it was and why it had to be closed when it did. And they're not all going to say the same thing, right? There's going to be, I read Jim Hummel's report yesterday. There's a lot of back and forth between the people that are drafting the report, apparently, and we're only seeing a snapshot of it. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know that that's unusual. I mean, I've worked with a lot of experts over the course of my career. I represented large companies for 7 years at a Boston law firm called Goodman Proctor, right out of law school. You have testifying experts and you have non-testifying experts. And, for one thing, you never share your non-testifying experts. The rules allow for that. You hire one set of experts to testify and one set of experts to examine. And why do you do that? Because you want to go down different lanes to see what might be out there. And this isn't criminal litigation where anything that's exculpatory, you got to turn over. That's not the way it works. So those experts, you want experts that can explore and think and consider, and then if that information is something that you don't want to share with your testifying expert or the other side, you don't need to. The rules account for that. So discovery is not a matter of just turning everything over and while you're at it, turning it over to the public. It's way more complicated than that. So on this particular issue, that report is out there in discovery along with a lot of other information. And so we treated all that information the same way, which was we're not sharing discovery, on our website. we never talked to the judge about that, and I can't imagine. I don't want to speak for Judge Stern or any other judge in that particular context, but I think a judge would have it would give them pause were there to be such a request. In any event, so this website, What's Going On in Rhode Island, let's just put it this way: they have an unusual approach, at least as it comes to me. But in any event, my communications team let me know on, I think it was Thursday or Friday, that they had been observing these sort of bits and pieces coming out. And so the question was, well, what do we do? And my answer was, well, we can't, it's clear that this social media account has this information. We don't know who they are. We don't know how much of the report they're going to share or not share. This could manipulate the public narrative, both for a jury later on, most importantly, and the public conversation right now. And so in a situation where there were no good options, is either just let them keep doing it and do nothing, or put it out. I decided to just post it on our website. So I let our communications team know to put it up on the website. I think that was, and I was picking my son up at the airport, so the timing it remains very clear in my mind. That was sometime in the mid-afternoon, 2-3 o'clock. And then when I was on the way to pick up my son at the airport around 5:30, I got a call from Tim White at WPRI and said he had a copy of the report and wanted to authenticate it. And that's very difficult for me to do with a long report. How do I know all the pages are there? And so that only confirmed that my decision earlier was the right one, because I was able to tell Tim, just go to our website, and that's where the complete report is. You don't have to worry about what someone sent you anonymously. I don't know if it was anonymous to Tim. I didn't know who sent it to him, so I can't speak to the bona fides of whoever sent it to him. So just go to our website, and then you'll have the right one. So that's what we did with that particular report. And what I've heard since is, well, that report shows that DOT made mistakes. And my answer to that is, so what? In terms of the litigation. It may not be so what in terms of whether you think DOT bears enough fault that they need to be reorganized or personnel needs to be replaced. That's all I'm talking about. When I say so what, my answer is, in any negligence case, there's something called the blame pie. And everyone is eligible to get a slice of pie. And the jury at the end of the day decides who gets how much of a slice. 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%, 0%. So in the sea of people or companies and DOT, the jury someday will say, each one of those players, DOT and all the companies we sued, and maybe others, maybe other parties out there, that aren't in the lawsuit, that somehow get pulled into them. Cardi, for example, is out there, not sued, but they're a player out there. They've worked on this bridge. They're going to be assigned a slice of pie. And let's say DOT is, pick your number. Look, I don't know what the number is. It could be 0, but let's pick a number let's pick a Ken Block number. Let's pick 50%. Maybe he'd go higher than that. Let's say the jury agrees with a Ken Block number of 50% and awards and decides that the liability here is $500 million. The state gets $250 million.
Right.
That's the way our negligence law works in Rhode Island. It's different in other states. In some states, it's all or nothing.
Right.
In other states, it's no more than 50 or 51%. But in Rhode Island, it's true comparative contributory negligence. And what that means is everybody gets a slice. So, okay, DOT, let's assume DOT didn't do everything the right way. Missed a thing here or there, hired the wrong inspectors, didn't follow up, didn't clean a catch basin. Maybe all that's true. Maybe they get assigned a slice of blame, 10% or a Ken Block number of 50%. State still has a chance to recover, and that's why that's why this lawsuit has a potential for recovery.
I completely agree that there is you didn't say this, I'm in agreement that based on what I have heard discussed around this very specific issue of this document being published, there seems to be a lack of understanding of the specifics of Rhode Island civil litigation and the fact that you could divvy up that pie. It's not an all or nothing situation. And so any blame that goes towards DOT is not inherently tanking the lawsuit in its entirety.
It's almost like, well, DOT had some fault here, so okay, the litigation's a farce, I think, to as Block wrote. He's not a lawyer, doesn't understand it. Look, the judgment could have been made. Don't bring a lawsuit at all. It's going to take a lot of time. It's going to keep information out of the public view. And when we balance all those things, we'd rather not bring a lawsuit. But if we go back to where we started on this case, the governor felt very strongly about bringing a lawsuit. He did not involve my office for months as he was considering it. He hired his own lawyers, one of whom's already departed, Max Wistow. And came to us with 4 or 5 days with Max Wistow still in the case before, according to them, there would be some issues where we might not be able to bring the case. And so on balance, my decision was that we should bring that case. And we'll see how it works out in the end. But from where I sit, bringing the case doesn't prevent the public or the General Assembly from holding oversight hearings to determine whether or not, looking back on how this bridge was handled, going back as far as they want to go, a year, 10 years, 20 years, that DOT leadership or personnel or practice or approach needs to be changed. I'm not saying it does. I'm just saying that those two things are not inconsistent. You can do both. You can have your cake here needed to. You can bring litigation and the public can get answers. The question is there a will to provide them? And to me, that's always been the issue.
Yeah.
The original oversight hearings, nobody was put under oath. You have to put people under oath. You have to put them under oath. That's why grand juries are so important.
Right.
And frankly, could be more helpful to getting truth. People talk about an independent,
They want the Inspector General.
Inspector General.
Yeah.
The best thing you can have to bring accountability is an Attorney General with the ability to issue a grand jury report where there is no indictment, because there you can get every record you want, you can put anyone you want under oath, you can immunize people to force them to testify and get answers. And there is no other way to do that. There is no other way to do that. I don't care how much you love the concept of an Inspector General. They just won't be able to deliver the same level of answers as that process would. And yet, no matter how many years I put in that legislation, I can't get it passed.
Yeah.
And we're going to see, Bill, when we issue our diocese report in the next few months at the outside, we're going to talk about our inability to issue a grand jury report. Really, the report is a significant expose on how the church in Rhode Island, the Diocese of Providence, handled childhood sexual abuse by priests. But it has its limitations because we weren't able to use the grand jury. Because if I'd used the grand jury, I wouldn't be able to tell the Rhode Islanders anything.
Right.
We'd be able to indict the 4 or 5 priests we indicted, but I couldn't talk about what the diocese did or didn't do along the way. And I felt from the beginning that's what Rhode Islanders wanted to know and needed to know.
Attorney General Neronha, from your office here in Cranston, frosted windows included.
Yes, keeping us safe, apparently.
Evidently.
That's new.
Look out. Thanks for your time.
Ruining my view. Thanks, Bill.
At HealthSource RI for Employers, we provide access to health insurance to more than 1,200 local businesses and nonprofits. And 96% of them renew through us every year. Maybe it's our choice of 19 different health plans, our more than 10 years of customizing solutions, or our one local team of dedicated experts helping employers find quality health and dental insurance. See how our numbers stack up for you. Learn more at healthsourceri.com/employers.